Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girlz. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here are your supernatural hosts, Patricia Baker and Becky Andreasen. Supernatural Girlz.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Supernatural Girlz Radio. I am your host, Patricia Baker, and I am here with my co-host, the fabulous, world-renowned numerologist, Patricia Kirkman. Hi, Patricia. How are you tonight?
Hello, sweetie. I am absolutely fabulous.
Ah, love to hear that.
Oh, it's beautiful. Beautiful day, beautiful world. What more could we ask for?
I think that's it. You've covered it. You have covered it. Oh, my goodness.
I wanted to get there first.
Yeah. We've got a great guest on for tonight, Gen O'Neil, and he's going to be talking about his book, The Upraised Chalice. And it's all about spiritual adventures, his near-death experiences, the Brotherhood of Light. We've got some questions, don't we?
Very interesting topics, for sure.
Oh, gosh, yes. Perfect for our audience. So, my goodness, I just sent out a tweet with the angel that appeared in Becky Andreasen's window last Friday when we were doing the skull experiment. It was Becky and your friend, and now my friend too, George Lugo, and myself. Just an amazing session. And at some point, I think what we're going to do, Patricia, is have Robin Foy come back to the show. He was the original medium and researcher from the UK, and he was the one who did the original skull experiment, who encouraged us to go ahead. And I think we should all have a conversation, Becky and George and me and you and Robin.
Love it.
So
I
know he'll be yes, and he's so generous. He gets up in the middle of the night there in Spain, and he'll call in, and we will have a wonderful time sharing about our vast experience in the last year and a half with Skull and what has been happening most recently, because things have truly ramped up. So, again, this angel picture I just sent out on Twitter is remarkable, and you saw it. It was pretty wild, huh?
Oh, it was fabulous. I just couldn't get over it.
Yeah, really amazing. And there was more than one picture, and there was more than one angel. So we're going to be able to eventually post everything on the blog and on the website so people can see what we're up to. Eventually we'll be inviting people to sit with us when we do the skull experiment. But speaking of angels, you and I were discussing a story that has hit all the major news medias. The Salt Lake City first responders had heard the mystery voice before rescuing that toddler from the river. Wasn't that incredible?
I could not believe that. And the thing that is so fabulous about that is to think that they say that the mother passed on impact, and this child was there for 14 hours, upside down. And she's only, what they said, 18 months?
18 months old, yes.
And they heard the calling of, help me, help my child. Incredible. And
it is.
There was no one there that could speak to them. That's God's way of handling those that really need.
And don't you think,
incredible.
too, I mean, a mother's love goes beyond life, right
I
into
think so.
the other realities.
I think so.
I mean, I think to me, it really speaks to a mother's connection to her child and the love that she had and has for that child, that she reached beyond the grave and brought those men in to look for her baby in the car, because they were probably thinking there's, nobody left alive in there. Even though they did hear the voice.
The child was there for 14 hours. There was no food. As I say, she's 18 months old, hanging upside down. All the firemen, first responders, were treated for hypothermia immediately upon rescuing this child, and yet this child was not in that same situation, body-wise.
Just incredible. I love stories like this. I mean, they just fill you with hope, and give you a great sense of connection with the divine. It's a beautiful story, and you know what? I'm really happy that the mainstream media is finally reporting on something like this.
Oh, definitely.
They could have ignored it, but they didn't.
I remember a few years back there was a major accident, and there was someone that was there immediately and started helping people pull this individual out.
It was a priest who appeared out of nowhere. It turned out to be a real priest in that story.
How he got there, they were totally unaware of.
Yeah, he was just all of a sudden there, but he was a real person. Everybody was saying he was probably an angel, but as it turned out, he was a real person, and still it was a miracle and a half that woman lived, because she said, "Please pray for me," and he did, and she made it. So all these miracles around us every day, and again, having that one reported, having this most recent one reported, it's just so heartwarming.
Well, those 3 little children that were walking, they had their youngest brother in a stroller, and some fellow swooped him up and ran off with it, and a 6-year-old or 8-year-old daughter ran after him screaming and yelling, and then the brother, who was 8, ran behind them yelling, and then two teenagers jumped in. They got the child, and the fellow took off. They have no idea where he's from. It was a small town of maybe 500 people.
Gosh.
This just
I
happened
saw
yesterday.
that. I saw the video of the little boy running after this abductor, and thank God they caught the guy and those 2 teenagers that helped and to get the baby back. I mean, it's just, it just boggles my mind, because the difference that is so, it's just so glaring between the light and the darkness today. I mean, who would take a child? I mean, it's just so disgusting. More than that, there's no word for that. And yet here was her brother, who was a hero, and the teenagers who were heroes in this, and the police who did catch the guy. I mean, it all came together to make sure that guy would be behind bars, which I hope will be forever. But it's, again, it's just some of these things that are reported, you get the highest of high from good behavior, and the lowest of low. It's like, goodness me, it's scary.
Watching that teeter-totter is scary.
Yes.
It is so scary.
It really can be today, and oh my goodness. So, but really, you're right. I mean, all of these stories, that was a miracle. That baby was saved. So, on and on we go. And I know
we've seen 2 major miracles in the last couple of days.
Yeah, I love it. We're going to be talking about miracles tonight, because Gene also survived 2 severe accidents that could have taken his life easily. So we're going to be hearing from him on that and what it feels like to survive those types of events. But for now, let's talk about numbers. Tomorrow is a day of 12. What does that mean?
Well, it is a 12 day, but I always look at the combination. So it's a universal day of 5, but the 12 day is about 3, which is creative, communication, things being on, but the 5 itself is all about speed, doing things in a hurry, making major changes. And the 3 is creative. So you're going to have a lot of creativity going on tomorrow, scattered energies, people driving too fast. Unfortunately, that's part of it. So do take a look, because there's also going to be somebody on a motorcycle standing around the corner waiting for you.
Uh-oh.
They fit together. I've said this before. I'll leave the house for something, and within a couple of blocks of home, I'll see one sitting here or someone sitting there. But 5 deals with speed and doing things in a hurry and not seeing what's happening. And it will be a universal day of 3 that has all about creativity, communications, but scattered energies. But 3 and 5 are extremely lucky. They have a luck factor to them. So for those that are so inclined, I'm sure you can hear a little ka-ching somewhere down the road.
Maybe buy that lottery ticket.
That's right. Or hope that somebody that owes you pays you back.
That's the same way. Too. That works. Yeah. That works well.
It makes life interesting.
Terrific. Well, okay, so this is what we have to look forward to. And, I got to back up a little bit, too, Patricia, because last week when we had George Lugo on the show, who was amazing, and everybody wrote in and said how much they loved him. He was a fantastic guest. They were just thrilled with him. At the end of the show, he is a sweetheart, and he just adores you as he should. So anyway.
Yes, now that you mention it.
But I wanted to let everybody know what happened, because at the end of the show, I play a soundbite for the outro, okay? And when I went to play it, guess what? I couldn't play it because George's energy got so intense, it shut down the internet. So I could not play our outro. I had to reset everything, reset the internet. I couldn't even end the episode because it gives me a little button to do. I couldn't do any of it. And so I'm sitting here going, oh, no. And I had to just go through all of these ruminations before I could finally at least play the outro. And at the end of it all, I still couldn't hit the end episode. So for anybody who was waiting for that soundbite at the end, sorry, it wasn't me screwing up.
It was George.
It was the energy,
you know.
Yeah, and well, then this is also, you know, when we get into such intense energy with mediums and
that's
psychics.
for sure.
Oh my gosh! Like when we were doing Skull last Friday with Becky and George, the energy was so intense that eventually, after the angels showed up and we got photographs of them, we all got kicked off Skype. We could not get back on. And so, again, the energy was just too intense. And in Becky's room, her lamp started to flicker on, off. She was afraid it was going to explode. So she actually had to shut it down. Yeah, so this is what happens sometimes when the energy is that intense. And it happened last week at the end of the show. So I just want to let everybody know, as usual, it's where the paranormal is normal, right here on Supernatural Girls Radio.
That's right.
This is what happens.
Expect the unexpected.
That's true. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to bring our guest on tonight. He's a very interesting, accomplished man. His name is Gen O'Neil, and he is the author of an interesting book called An Upraised Chalice. And he is an aviation instructor, a corporate pilot, a marketing agency owner, and truth seeker of the light and the truth. He's traveled to many sacred places in the world and lived to tell the stories of his remarkable encounters. So, Gen, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks so much. It's a joy to be here with you guys, and it's been wonderful listening to your tales.
We have tales of wonder, but I know you do too, and that's what you're going to be talking about with us. So, what was it that made you write this book, Gen?
It was payback, pure and simple. You know, there have been so many basically overwhelming experiences and miracles in my life, blessing after blessing after blessing, not only to me but my family, my extended family, and I knew it was something I had to do ever since I walked in Glastonbury, England, and then on to Jerusalem, and then across Asia to the Himalayas. I knew I was going to have to write at some point. I just didn't figure it would take me over 3 decades to do it, but, you know, that's what happens, you know. Well, but it was all payback.
And now you left for your journey through the Middle East and Europe and all these exciting places to Mount Everest, and you were in your early 20s when you did this. Is that correct?
Right.
So something was calling you away from the United States.
Well, I was, after I got out of the military, I was in the military for a couple of years and got out of the military and started going to UMass in Amherst, not too far away from where you are.
That's right.
And you know, was always interested. My first experience with the concept of the Brotherhood of Light, happened when I was probably 13 or 14 when I read a book about Edgar Cayce and his the later work that he did in his lifetime, and his encounter with these great masters who composed a Brotherhood of Light, where he talked about reincarnation and karma and all this stuff. And when I read that when I was 13 or 14, I said, geez, this is something I've always known, even though I never heard it before. So over the years, I kept my eyes and ears open, and you know, after the military and in college, things really started gearing up, and I really felt that I had something I had to take care of, and it wasn't staying at UMass. And one morning I woke up in the wee hours, and I had a dream that just changed my life. I felt that in this dream I was carrying on at a local bar and doing the same thing that I've been doing for a couple of years, like every college student does. And there was this big earthquake, and I ran out of the bar, and the stars were falling, and the buildings were collapsing, and I had this sickening sense that I had something to do in this lifetime, and I blew it because I didn't listen to my heart. And so within a week, I had sold my motorcycle and my stereo, which was all my possessions at that time. Said goodbye to my girlfriend and left the United States for a year and a half, and to find out what it was that I was supposed to do. And that's how that started. And then it just took off from there.
So you were traveling by yourself, or did you have a traveling companion?
No, I was by myself. And I tied up with a young lady for a couple of months in the early part of it. But when you're on a quest, you could compare it to what people call a vision quest now. When you're on a quest, it's best to deal with your own energy, your own karmic patterns, and then a lot of things can happen to you that could not happen to you otherwise. And that's how it shook out. When I said so long, things really started accelerating in Jerusalem, and
how did your family feel that you were leaving and school and then leaving the country? Did you have their support, or were they kind of scratching their heads going, uh-oh, I don't know what to think here?
Well, it's probably being a firstborn, they don't know what to expect, but, I was supposed to take over my family business and didn't want to have anything to do with it. And, I was always kind of like the black sheep. And so I just said I was going, and that was it, and left the country with $1,300 in my pocket and a round-trip ticket to London. Lasted a year and a half.
You were very frugal then.
Yeah, you made that dollar stretch. Gosh, I wish I could do that.
Well, that's what I mean. When you're traveling by yourself and you're wearing a male body, was a lot easier than it would be for a female these days. That's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, especially these days. Yes, absolutely. So you started in England? Is that where you started your trip and then went from there?
Yep. And, I was focused in on southwest England, Glastonbury, Stonehenge. I didn't really know why I was going there. I just always wanted to go there. Spent about 3 weeks there hanging out with a friend, and then went on through Europe, and just knew I had to get south. I had to get down to Sicily, into Greece. There's just something about that part of the world that was calling me. After spending a month and a half or so on a Mediterranean, on the north shore of the Mediterranean, I knew I had to go to Israel. And I got in a plane and flew to Israel and made a beeline for Jerusalem. And got to Jerusalem in the wee hours of the morning. It was probably 4 o'clock in the morning or something, and I just knew I had to get there on that particular day. And I don't know if you folks have been to Jerusalem before, but it's a pretty intense place. You can only imagine.
I have not been there. Patricia, have you been there?
No, I was through Greece and such, but in Spain, but not through Jerusalem.
Yeah, I was in Egypt, but not through Jerusalem. But you're saying it was very intense even back then.
Oh yeah, this was in '72 when I was there. And when I got to the old city of Jerusalem, it's surrounded by this giant wall that's probably in some places might be 30, 40 feet in diameter, or maybe 40, 50 feet high, 60 feet high. And there are these gates that you walk into the old city of Jerusalem, and all the streets are cobblestone, and the buildings are, have been there forever, literally for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And the streets are serpentine. They all curve back on each other, and even with a map, it's very, very hard to find your way. So here I am, just off a plane from Athens. It's about 4 o'clock in the morning. I just got dropped off at the bus stop and walked to the old city, and I walked through the gate, and I'm being pulled by I had no idea what, but I was on a mission. I was walking very quick. I would walk down this street and then curve back onto this street like I knew where I was going. And I'm watching myself do this, saying I have no idea what's going on. And then before too long, I'm on the alleyways in Jerusalem are probably, there might be 50 feet wide or something like that, the widest ones. The narrowest ones could be 20 feet wide or so. A wonderful book called The Expected One that describes what Jerusalem is like by Kathleen something or another, but an amazing book about Mary Magdalene and Jesus. But at any rate, I'm following, being pulled from one place to another. There's absolutely no one around. And then before too long, I'm standing at this subterranean steps, these large steps in this very dark alley with only one light, maybe 100 feet away. And at the bottom of these steps, there's this big door, and there's 3 or 4 monks with hoods waiting at this door, waiting to get in. And I walked down these steps and got right in back of these monks, not even knowing what I was doing, not even knowing where I was. And then, over the next 20 minutes to a half hour, 3 or 4 other monks came and stood in back of me. No one said anything. They looked at me, I looked at them, and they just went back to their own meditations. And I was standing in the subterranean steps for, probably at least a half hour, maybe even longer, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour. It was still dark. It was before dawn, and then the door opened up. This huge old oak wooden door opened up. And inside was candlelight. And the monks started walking in, and I walked right in, and I was in some kind of subterranean basement where everything was highly polished, though. And there were Greek icons. I forget what they call that type of art. But these
Byzantine?
it was that, but it was even older. And it was... and there was just candlelit, and there were lanterns in there, oil lanterns. And I couldn't read the writing on the wall, but after a while, I walked a little bit further, and there were steps going up the steps. And as I got up to the first level of steps, I walked into, it opened up into a very large church, and there is a sign there in English. It said the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And then I knew where I was. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre was the first church in Christendom. It was built on Golgotha, Calvary, right where it happened. And my hair was standing up on the back of my head, and I walked up to the 3rd level of the church where there was this little altar built over a rock, and went into meditation there, watching the sun come up through the stained glass windows, right where the rock was split by the cross. And then after I don't know how long, it was quite some time, 2 priests came up to me and took me out of this meditation that I was in, and they said, "You've been sleeping here for most of the day, and you're not going to sleep here tonight." And they picked me up and escorted me and deposited me on the front steps of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And it was late afternoon, and I had lost several hours. And at that moment, I realized that I had been watching Jesus heal and teach people from Akasha. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. The Akashic records is the
definitely.
Yeah, well,
absolutely.
And I won't get into explaining that. But what was pretty cosmic after that, I was in a daze, and I walked down the street about 100 yards to this little open-air cafe on this back street in Jerusalem, just 100 yards from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And I stopped in there, and I got a Coke, and I'm just sitting down. And there were 3 or 4 other people in there. And after about 5 minutes, this guy comes in. He was probably 10 or 15 years older than I was, maybe mid-30s, maybe 40s. And he sits across from me. He's got some kind of clerical cloth on, some kind of religious robe or something. And he says, "You look like you've just been through an amazing experience." And I said, "Boy, you could say that." And he says, "Well, I have something for you." And he gave me a book called The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ by Levi. And this book, I didn't know what to make of it. I thanked him, and he smiled and walked away, and that was it. And this book was conveyed by an angel to an American minister somewhere in the 1890s in California. And it was the first book that DeVores and Company published. And a big spiritual publisher for, almost 100 years, I guess over 100 years now.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And this was the first book that they published. And when I read this book, it talked about what Jesus really did and what really happened. And it talked about Jesus working with this great brotherhood of light and taking these initiations from different masters around the world that talked about the laws of karma and reincarnation, and this was something that I always knew in my heart. And so, again, my hair was just standing up on the back of my head that all these experiences happened within my first 24 hours in Jerusalem. And so that kind of set the tone. From there, I went up and worked on a kibbutz in Upper Galilee for 3 months, where I learned how to meditate and, talking to my presence, and I would call. And again, I'm not a Christian. I was brought up as a Catholic when I was a kid, but I left the Catholic Church when I was 12. So this was.
I think that's what we all do.
Yeah, I knew Jesus was real, but I knew he had very little to do with the Catholic Church. And this book was just such an affirmation. And then by and by, after meditating every morning at dawn on the Jordan River and thinking about what Jesus really did and said, and thinking about what were these masters, who were they, where were they, how do you find them? And the part that was so intriguing to me is that you didn't find them, they found you. And they found you when you were ready. And that's the part that was so intriguing to me, because immediately I said, well, this is going to rule out all this organized religious stuff that I just couldn't deal with at all, had no space for. And it was just, I said, okay, show me. And every morning in my meditations, I would say, show me. And I would refer that to Jesus. I would refer that to my presence, my divine presence. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I had a presence. I came later to know that it was the I am presence. But it went on and on and on, and finally after a while...
Let me just ask you, Jean, before you continue with your story, because meditation for the American people isn't the easiest thing to master. And you talk about being able to meditate for hours at a time. Granted, there are some people here in the United States that can do that, as you can. But it's hard for most of the people that I talk to meditate for even 20 minutes. So how did you find that to be so easy? I mean, is it something that you feel just came naturally to you? Did you have to work at it?
Great question, Patricia. So here's the deal. In those days, I had no clue what I was doing. I would put my attention on this, and I would ask myself these questions, and I would walk, and I would try to listen to my heart, and I would have these dialogues with God, whatever God was. I had no clue what God was. I knew Jesus was a great master, but I knew there were a lot of other masters. I just didn't know their names. I knew Buddha was a great master. I knew Krishna was a great master. I knew Mother Mary was a great master, but I didn't know anything other than that. I read bits and pieces of the Theosophical Society material by then, but somewhere in that point, I knew I had to go east. And as I went east, I started to understand that there is a difference between a dynamic meditation and a static meditation. The static is where you go into the silence, like Vipassana, and you just watch your breath, and you just go deeply into the stillness, deeper and deeper and deeper into the stillness. But I came later on to learn that the science of mantra, when incorporated in a meditation practice, becomes the actual giving of a mantra or a prayer, or by a prayer I mean your own heart musings with the divine and all of life. Okay, I found that when you can, for me, that when you're focusing on these what I call prayer or mantras, whether a great master wrote them or whatever. And again, I'm not talking about Christian prayer in any way, shape, or form here. Maybe Christian mystic prayer. I'm not familiar with that, but I'm talking fundamentalist Christian prayer. I'm not talking about that at all. But that would probably work too if the heart's fire was pure enough and ready. But I found that by putting my attention on these mantras, and I'm not talking about Sanskrit mantras, although some of those will work fine as well, but English phrases, affirmations, that I found that doing those for a while, especially visualizing the light pouring down on family and friends and loved ones and world situations where there was conflict, caused a vibration in my consciousness that started to shut down the monkey mind. that's what I would call people who are learning how to meditate when their mind wants to jump from this, that, to the other thing. I said, okay, well, let's do this little exercise. We're going to visualize this glorious light of the I am just pouring down into each person's life, and visualize that person just opening up their heart, and their faces becoming more luminous, and they're smiling, and this light of their own divine presence is pouring into them. And I did that visualization. This is a visualization I learned in India. I did that visualization with the affirmations for perhaps, until I ran out of people and world situations to do it for. And then I just stopped. And then the return of that energy, the karmic return of that free will choice that I did of sending out that beneficent karma by these blessings to people all over the world, stopping that, I could feel the return of that karma coming back into my world. And that brought a great deep peace. And that quieted the monkey mind. So that's the long and short of it. In the book, Patricia, on Upraised Chalice, Adventures and Near-Death Encounters in My Search for the Brotherhood of Light and What It Can Mean for You, I have in that book dozens of these affirmations in English that are very, very beautiful thought forms that the great masters have written. And when someone puts their attention on those thought forms, on those affirmations that are contained in the last part of the book, and they're sincere, within a matter of a few weeks, if they do those every day, in a matter of a few weeks, they will see proof in their life of the power of these tremendous affirmations.
I love those prayers. I love prayers in general because it does help to focus, right?
Absolutely, that's it.
The prayers that you listed in the back of your book I thought were wonderful, and it's a great reference. And again, tell people where they can buy your book, because this is basically an electronic book. So tell them how they can get this.
Well, it's not. It is available in ebook, but it is in print. It was in print first. It's available on Amazon, and it's available at Barnes and Noble. It's available at any bookstore anywhere in the world right now, and it's all payback, and the near-death experiences that are in there, there's probably 4 or 5 of them that are listed in the book, and they're in there for a reason. It's about the cause and effect. You were talking about that little girl, that baby girl, that who's obviously it wasn't her time to go, because this little girl is hanging upside down, inches from the water that her mother was submerged in, and this little girl survived for all those hours. My heavens, that little girl has some work to do in this lifetime. I'll tell you that. She's a special one, and thank God that the angels and or the mother were involved in speaking to those rescue people, so that little girl could be found. Because when they flipped the car over, they didn't even know the little girl was in there. So this was, when you have something to do in life and you put your heart to it. All right, this is the part that's so beautiful, and the biggest factor of this story, that when you have a mission in your lifetime, when your heart starts to wake up and you begin to draw down this great fire of your own divine presence, your own I am presence individualized in you, as you pull that fire down, and this, by whatever name you want to call it, the divine is within you, and the more that you pull that down, the more you put your attention on it, the more it accelerates everything in your life, and it becomes, your aura becomes charged with this white fire purity of the great mother flame, and it radiates out in concentric circles, greater and greater and greater distances, depending on the purity and the yearning of the heart flame in embodiment who is involved in prayer and meditation in this exercise. So when this gets going for a period of time and it's consistent, the biggest thing about meditation, it has to be consistent, day by day by day by day by day. And when you do it at the same time of the day and you get a momentum into that, this fire from your presence is just increasing and increasing in your aura, and it affects everything in your life in time and space, and not only in your life, everything that you're going to be touching, whether it's today, whether it's tomorrow, even when it's yesterday, last year. this sacred fire of the Great Mother just goes forth. And if someone has a karmic appointment to have a terrible, tragic accident that's going to take them out of life, this incarnation, that karma is predestined and set forth by the Lords of Life and by that individual's presence. This is their lot. This is what they have to deal with. And in my case, when I was killed in that head-on accident, it was something that I had to deal. I had this coming up, and I knew for over a month that it was coming, and I knew every day.
So you were having premonitions a month before you were actually in the accident. And when I was reading the book, I saw that you actually thought you might be involved in a plane crash because you were a flight instructor, and you thought maybe one of the people you were teaching was going to kill you. So not an unlikely scenario, apparently, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happened was that I had two students that I was going to be. I had a flight plan up to northern Maine, and it was a cold December day, and I just kept these impressions got harder and stronger and stronger. Now this is almost 15, 20 years after India. Okay, so I had my very strong meditation practice every day. I had a very strong decree, affirmation, mantra, momentum, and I would spend, I spend every day at least an hour in prayer and meditation every morning before I do anything. So I'm heading down to the airport, and I knew this was coming, and I said, well, if it's going to come one way or another, and I just have to go. And anytime I go anywhere, I do these mantras for my family, for the world. And then I was focusing on my flight plan, what I was doing. So I'm driving on I-91, heading, and just before I turn off on 2 East toward Boston, I'm driving about 75 miles an hour, and all of a sudden there's an explosion of fire in front of me in my car, a sphere of fire about a foot in diameter, scintillating, intensely beautiful, intensely powerful fire, and in the fire is Archangel Michael. And Archangel Michael commands me to do this mantra, this affirmation of protection. And it was a thunderclap, and I just was dazed, and I slowed down from 75 to 50, saying to myself, did this really happen? Did I just see this? Did this really happen? Because I don't normally. I've been blessed with a few visions here and there, and some pretty beautiful experiences along the way. But this is something totally out of the way above my pay grade, way above my pay grade, and I was astonished, and I'm going at 50 miles an hour. Everything's in super slow motion, and I'm doing exactly the mantra that Archangel Michael told me to do. And then a minute later, a car in the other lane lost control, flipped over, and hit me head on within a space of a few seconds. And and just before it happened, I recognized the guy. I recognized that this was a karmic payback, and I'm in the void. And so this is as far as a lot of people have had near-death experiences, but not too many people have had near-death experiences that actually happened before the trauma, that started happening before the actual trauma that ended up taking him out of incarnation. All right, and that's on this particular near-death experience. That's exactly what happened to me. I got warned by Archangel Michael, visually and every possible level, and that happened because I got the warning. I was able to perceive the warning, and that happened because of the strong meditation and prayer momentum that I had in my life at that time for many years. And the fact that I was doing these presentations on the Masters in the Brotherhood of Light periodically over the years, to large groups of people.
Yeah. So you were warned, Gene, and then you were commanded to say this prayer immediately, and you did. And then the guy loses control of the car, hits you head on, and as I recall from the book, you ended up actually crawling out of the car after the impact, and then basically collapsing and dying. When the emergency medical people came, you were not breathing. Is that correct?
Well, you're close. Right after the impact, I was out of my body. I was in this white blackness, this black whiteness, and saying, I'm dead. And I was totally aware, totally conscious. And Archangel Michael was there doing that same decree. And he said, join me. and he told me specifically, join me, Gene, in this decree, this affirmation, this prayer. And I did, and after an indeterminate amount of time in this space, I was falling, and I fall back down the tunnel, back into what was left of my car. And then I was commanded to get out of the car by Archangel Michael, because there was a thought that the car could blow up, because the impact was, somewhere around 90 miles an hour. And nothing below my waist worked, and I had to crawl out with my elbows, fell onto the ground, crawled up to the guardrail, and every time I would breathe, big blood bubbles would come out of my mouth and my nose. And I felt the liquid just pouring in, like someone was taking a pitcher and pouring a warm liquid into my lungs. And it became harder and harder for me to breathe. And finally, I did like a backflip right out of my body and went flying up the tunnel that you see that people talk about, the tunnel of light, going very, very, very fast. And right next to me was Archangel Michael, and I was doing that same prayer in absolute equanimity, absolute peace. And then after an indeterminate amount of time going up this tunnel, there was another master presence standing right next to me. So now there's two. And I believe this other master presence was Saint Germain. And he told me to do this mantra to the violet flame, an aspect of the sacred fire of love divine, of transmutation. And immediately when Saint Germain led this violet flame mantra with me, that he told me to join in with him, my whole body in that state was enveloped in this cool electric mist, this light, this electric mist, and the pressure the discomfort in my lungs was gone, and the forward going up the tunnel stopped. And I just stood and hovered there for a while doing this violet flame decree with Saint Germain, and then I began to descend quicker and quicker.
Before we go into that, Gene,
yep.
We're going to take a really short commercial break. This is an incredible adventure, and thank God you survived, but we're going to hear more about how you survived and why you survived. So everybody stay tuned, and we're going to take a short commercial break, and then we'll be right back. If you have a question for Gene, you can call in at 646-478-0828. Again, that's 646-478-0828. Or you can write a question in the chat room, and we will ask it for you. So everybody stay tuned. We will be right back.
Ready for a new experience of freedom and powerful connection? Would you like a positive, effortless change in your life? Then come to CosmicFusion.com, where we offer the most advanced energy clearing and expansion techniques in the world, with a quantum vortex energy to activate your divine blueprint and life's purpose. When your soul leads the way with cosmic fusion and quantum vortex energy, you can break clear of past difficulties and blocks with the power of the Source. With Cosmic Fusion, the Source energy does the work for you. It's easy and effortless. Listen to our free meditation right from our Cosmic Fusion website, the Cosmic Code Meditation. Sign up for one of our interactive webinars today. Come to Cosmic Fusion, www.KOSMICfusion.com, to experience an effortless awakening and transformation. Are you ready for an upgrade? Are you ready for a new experience of living in the fifth dimensional magic and powerful connection? Then visit CosmicFusion.com today. CosmicFusion.com.
Your property tax bill. Have you seen it lately? It's frightening. Your property taxes are going up while your home value is going down. It's time to fight back and win. For the real truth about the property tax system, get attorney Pat Quintilian's book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Attorney Quintilian answers all your questions and gives you the facts you need to fight a property tax bill that is spiraling out of control. You'll also read about what happens to property owners who don't check their property records, only to find out too late they're taxed on square footage, fixtures, and even buildings that they don't own. Is this happening to you? Learn your rights. Buy attorney Pat Quintilian's book today. Are you getting screwed on your property taxes? How to find out and how to fix it. Available on Amazon.com.
Bonjour, this is Veronique Raskin, founder of the Organic Wine Company. As one of the pioneers of the organic wine movement, since 1980 I have brought you the very best and most authentic organic wines directly to your table. I work with small family estates who grow certified organic grapes and produce exceptional wines. You can purchase our wines individually from our website at theorganicwinecompany.com or join one of our wine clubs. Our organic wines are perfect for you and for your family as gifts for friends and relatives, and they are simply spectacular for the holidays. Visit us at theorganicwinecompany.com to enjoy the very best organic wines conveniently delivered to your door. I am Veronique Raskin, passionate about my mission. I offer to you vegan, organic, and biodynamic wines, wines made by people of the heart, wines with a heart. Au revoir. Call us at 1-888-ECO-WINE.
Everyone, Patricia, Kirkman, and I are speaking with Gen O'Neil, who is an author, and he is the author of an interesting book called An Upraised Chalice. And we are on the edge of our seats here, Gen, because we want to hear the rest of your story. Here you were involved in a head-on accident when the other driver lost control of their car, careened head-on into you. You've climbed out of the car on your elbows because your lower half of your body isn't working. And you've spun out and through the tunnel of light surrounded by Archangel Michael and Saint Germain. And what happens next? We need to know.
Okay, I'm going to just buzz through this real quick because as interesting as this is, it's the real meat of the whole story is, when someone is really trying to do the best they can and connecting, with their own presence, they can make a difference not only in their life but in the lives of a lot of people. And that's certainly what you two ladies are about. The vibration of this program is just really beautiful. And I want to thank you for all the work that you've done. So just to make a long story real short, if anyone wants the details, they can just go and get the book online, get the ebook, or just go to Barnes & Noble or your favorite bookstore or Amazon and pick it up. But, when I was sent back into my body doing the violet flame decree, I popped back into my body after falling, coming down this tunnel of light really, really, really quick. Speeding down this tunnel of light back into my body. I was looking into the eyes of a paramedic, and he told me, he said, get this guy, okay, he's stable, get him out of here. And they wheeled me into the ambulance, and that's when I saw the other guy close up, and he was dead. He was not sent back. He was dead. They took me to the hospital. They told me that they told my family. My family came in a few hours later. They said my back was broken. All my ribs were broken. My heart was misfiring, and it was doubtful that I was going to make it. And that night in intensive care, after doing another ritual with Archangel Michael of these affirmations and decrees and prayers, I passed out, woke up, in a wee hours with intensive care with two nurses hooked up to some kind of machine so I could breathe and monitor my heart. And there were two angels in the room, and the nurses started crying. And but make a long story short, the next morning I didn't have a broken back anymore. And my heart was a lot more stable. The doctor said to me, he said, you were ready to die last night. Now you have the heartbeat of an athlete, a 21-year-old athlete, and I was 35 at the time. So these kinds of things can happen. And the most important thing to know is no matter what the karmic lot that someone has to come in and deal with in a life, when their first love is to be of service to life, to embody that love and that light of their own divine presence, there is a change that happens, and that change goes out and affects every facet of their life. It changes that person's karma. And according to the will of that person's presence and the Lords of Life, beloved Kuan Yin, the goddess of mercy, if someone's waking up and someone can get on with the program and be a blessing to life, that karma can be put aside or transmuted by mercy's flame, otherwise known as the violet flame. And
Gene, let me ask you a question though here, because I mean it's very obvious that you have incredible faith. So that when you were told by Archangel Michael before the accident, go ahead and say this prayer right now, you did it without question. You had such a strong sense of faith. And that's an important element, isn't it, in what you experience?
Well, it is, and a lot of people. I was asked a question in another interview not too long ago. How do you tell someone who has some serious problems with health or with addiction or with whatever, a lack of money? How do you inculcate that sense of faith? And for me, it was with Archangel Michael. This was a command, and it was like I didn't even have the option of saying no. I'm not going to do this. This was. The power in that command was so absolute. It was unequivocal. It was just, this is the way it is and it's going to happen. But for someone who is in the early stages of meditation in her own inner path, the most important thing is to have the purity of momentum. What I've taught people for years and for decades now, who are really sincere and really want to get with the program and really connect with their own divinity, is the very first thing in the morning and the very last thing at night to go into the quietness of their heart and call to the Great Mother in their heart, whoever they feel the Great Mother is, whether it be Mother Mary or Kuan Yin or just the Great Mother Omega, or just the Mother Nature or the sun or the stars or whoever it is, but to call to the Great Mother, the Great Father, their own divine presence and say, show me, please, what I need to do, and please help me to do it. And if they do that free will choice, and they verbalize that out loud in their heart, and before they go to sleep at night and the first thing in the morning when they wake up, and they do that consistently day after day after day, that's a free will choice. And the call compels the answer in this lower octave, in this physical octave, when the great ones cannot step through the veil unless, with full power, unless you ask them to do so. So if you're calling in the highest love and faith that you have within your heart to the Great Mother to intercede in your life and help you remember what you came into this world to do, to help you guide your children, to help you guide your friends, and to show you how to do it. And you have that prayer and that meditation before you go to sleep at night, so your vibration's automatically going up, so when your body drops off to sleep, the angels and the masters can take you up to the higher retreats of the Great Brotherhood. And then the first thing in the morning, because when you wake up that day, you're going to when you get out of bed, you're going to step right into your karma that's due back on that day for transmutation. And if you have the co-measurement of the heart flame to talk to the Great Mother, to talk to your Father, to talk to your divine presence and say, show me, please show me what I need to do today, and please help me to do it. Not for you, not for yourself, but for your children, for your family, for the world. And when you do that day after day after day, that creates a momentum. And that momentum translates into a deeper and deeper meditation. It may start out at 30 seconds or a minute of the silence. After you do that, it could go to several minutes. It could go to a half hour.
And I like what you're saying about kind of bookending your day, so that you start your day, you end your day with this type of prayer, affirmation, intent, whatever you want to call it. It
exactly.
works well. And I think the advice you're giving to people is excellent to keep it consistent. And as you mentioned earlier, you want your meditation to be successful, then do it at the same time every day. There's a consistency as you said, it begins to build an energy of its own, and it's also it does let other interdimensionals know that you are receptive to what they have to share. So I agree with you, and it's, I think, one of the biggest things missing from people's lives today is that kind of discipline. And I don't know how you got so disciplined, whether it was the military that helped you.
Well, but as a youngster, did you feel drawn towards this direction? I know you mentioned when you read Edgar Cayce's works that as you're 13, 14 years of age, but were you from a religious background? Was there a strong family unity where the spirituality was concerned? Although...
Well, Patricia, I was brainwashed as a Catholic until I was 12, and then I won't go to church anymore. There was too much of a dichotomy. And when I was a little boy, I loved hearing about the angels, but I hated going to church and seeing this tortured person hanging on a cross, and then seeing these dour nuns and these dour priests. I couldn't segue that. I couldn't understand how that could be. And when I was a little boy, I'd go out and talk with the angels and play, and after a while, I told my mom and my dad I didn't want to go to church anymore, and I got in a lot of trouble, and with my dad. But my mom gave me this book called The Search for Bridie Murphy, and when I was 12 or 13 years old, and that was, you're probably familiar with that title, it was the first really big breakthrough in reincarnation in America. And what a wonderful book that was. And I said, boy, I know I lived before, And then it was a year later or something that I read the Edgar Cayce book, So I had that already, but, discipline is something you go through, you get from the school of hard knocks, and I had certainly a bunch of hard knocks, a bunch of them,
But how many people do you know today, and I mean this for Patricia, you and Jean, that, say, oh, I've got to do something else first, no matter what that is. So this part of the spiritual connection, this part of the consistency of the bond can't happen because we're always putting other things ahead of it that need to be done.
Exactly. It's too easy to do, unfortunately.
Yeah. Look at, what you ladies are about is helping people break out of the matrix, okay? And it's such a wonderful analogy. And unfortunately, this whole culture is predicated on the matrix. In the East, they call it samsara, the world, or Maya, the world of illusion. And it's created by cause and effect, otherwise known as karma. Whatever you put your attention on, you're magnetizing that into your world. In the Western world here, people think that, I can kick back and go home and have a couple beers and watch a violent movie or watch some brainless reality show or whatever, all right, or pick up and read some, just after they work all day long, they come home and they want to relax, and they're going to relax. And so this is their life, and this is the stuff they're attracting into their world. But in the East, the great ones have taught for millennia that where your heart is, that's where your treasure is, and that's what you're drawing into your life. What you put your attention on, what you look at even, is a free will karmic choice, and you're drawing what you put your attention on back into your life. What you listen to, the kind of music you listen to, is drawing that vibration into your life. The feelings that you have and emote throughout the day when you engage with other people, you're drawing that, and you're sending that energy out, and it's picking up more of that and coming back into your life. The great ones have taught that the emotional body alone is a repository from anywhere from 75 to 95% of the energy of the crystal cord that animates life. And so people who have their emotional bodies askew, they're losing a huge amount of the daily allotment of life that pours down from their presence through the crystal cord. And so mastery is developed. And when I speak of the Brotherhood and the great ones, the great masters, the great ascended masters, I'm not just talking about some New Age fad here, all right? As I shared in the book, An Upraised Chalice, Adventures in Near-Death Encounters in My Search for the Brotherhood of Light and What It Can Mean for You, what I have shared in there is what was so fascinating to me as a young man, and still is today, that this brotherhood surfaced in contemporary times from around 1870 right up through the 1930s, 1940s, on 3 different continents that I know of, probably even 4 different continents. I'm just not too familiar with the African traditions, or familiar at all with the African traditions. But the same teachings, slightly different, but mentioning the brotherhood and mentioning these great masters, mentioning the laws of karma and reincarnation, showed up, from the Theosophical Society. They showed up. I mentioned earlier that wonderful book, The Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ by Levi, that was given by a great angel to an American minister in 1890. It showed up in the Spalding books, the teachings of the masters of the Far East. It showed up in the IM books from the Saint Germain Foundation in the 1930s. It showed up in Helena and Nicholas Rorick's work from Russia. It showed up in a wonderful series of teachings from South America. One of which is a movie that I don't know if you ladies have heard about it yet. It's called Astral City: A Spiritual Journey, and you can get it on YouTube for free. It's either in Portuguese or Spanish, and it's about 4 years old, and it's stunning. It's a stunning depiction of the teachings of the Brotherhood on what happens when someone dies and where they go and how they go up into the retreats and how they can come back. And after a period
and now that you're speaking of that part of it, of when you died, you came back. I just have to go back to that experience and ask you this question. Some people come back and they don't want to be here. They get resentful because they've had a taste of a peaceful, loving, all-encompassing energy. But it sounds like you did not experience that. What happened when you came back to your body? You must have been in a lot of pain.
It was, but, it's a little bit of pain. I wasn't able to do much for about 3 or 4 months, but I healed really quickly. But for me, there was no doubt in my mind. I had a little girl. She was 2 years old, and she needed her dad. There was no doubt in my mind that I had work to do. There was no doubt in my mind that I had to write this book. It just took me another couple of decades to do it. Talk about procrastination. It was terrible. So Patricia, the interesting thing here. And I have one particular little anecdote that I want to share with you, Patricia Kirkman, with your background in numerology and whatnot. Near-death experiences, some people just live a more adventurous life than other people, And I was flying hang gliders in my early 20s and went into aviation and became an instructor pilot and a corporate pilot and all that. And I was always into mountain climbing and scuba diving, and I built a homestead in southern Vermont on a mountaintop and built my own hydroelectric plant to power it. And all the time doing meditation retreats, teaching people how to meditate. But one time on my 23rd birthday, all right, I had been out of the United States for almost a year and a quarter, 14 months or something, 15 months at that time. And I was living in the Aurobindo ashram in South India, and about 100 miles south of Madras, which is now called Chennai. And this is after traveling across the Himalayas and visiting all the monasteries up there and talking with these lamas, even though I couldn't speak Tibetan, and having an amazing experience on the side of Mount Everest where I fell into a crevasse and was able to crawl out and go snowblind and have to crawl down hand over hand in the middle of the night with a full moon in the Himalayas from 18,500 feet. So I had quite a bit of experiences happening. And all this is in a book, but the point that I wanted to pass on to you, because this gets into another facet of near-death experiences. All right. At this point, I already had 3 or 4 of them in my life, but I'm in meditation at the Aurobindo ashram, and I lived there. I was part of the ashram for 3 or 4 months. Aurobindo is considered the George Washington of India, a beautiful teacher. His twin flame was called the Mother. And she was still alive when I was there. And they formed a community called Auroville. And it was a spiritual community based on the ley lines that were connected to Finhorn and to Lake Titicaca and other power centers on the earth. And many, many different intuitive, clear, psychic individuals, masters, would talk about the power of this place called Oroville. And that's the reason I went there anyways, to check it out, even though I didn't even know who Aurobindo was at the time. But all this is in a book. So I took my bike. I was given a bicycle because I worked in the ashram. And I decided to take the day off on my 23rd birthday. And I rode my bicycle about 10 miles up the coast road to the place where the future community of Oroville would be built. And my mentor at the ashram was a beautiful gentleman. He was a retired Supreme Court Justice from India by the name of Santosh Chakravarti. He was my mentor at the ashram, who kind of would talk to me about the different spiritual things that I was going through. He was in his 70s. I was in my early 20s. And he was just a treasure. And he told me about Oroville and where to go. And he said, when you get there, you're going to go up a dirt road. It was all dirt roads. There's nothing but dirt roads in that part of India. And you go up this hill overlooking the ocean, the Indian Ocean. And you're going to go up this hill for a while, and then you're going to come into a big flat plateau. And there's going to be one giant banyan or cashew apple tree there, and then you're going to be able to look out over the ocean. And there's a little bamboo hut there. And when you get there, you can meditate in this bamboo hut. The bamboo hut is exactly where the center of Oroville will be when they build it. All right? And so I got up there, and it was the tropics in India. It was in May. It was in the tropics. It was May 25th, 1973. And it was just about noontime. And I was sweating profusely after riding this bicycle for the last couple of hours up here. And I had a little jug of water, and I went in there to this bamboo hut to get out of the sun. And then there's a little bench in this bamboo hut. And it was, the whole thing was made of bamboo fronds and woven together, and it was just a door. And the hut was probably, maybe 7 or 8 feet in diameter, and there was a peaked roof on it with a beam that went across the roof to hold it up, and a little meditation bench underneath it. So I'm sitting on this meditation bench, which is about 2 feet off the ground, and I'm sitting there, and I go into a very deep, deep meditation for perhaps 20 minutes to half hour, something, however long it was, maybe longer, maybe less. Then after a while, I felt a movement in my aura, and I said, oh, someone must be coming. Someone must be walking toward the meditation hut. So I slowly opened my eyes, expecting to see someone coming toward me, and there was no one there. So I just ignored it and went back again into very deep meditation, so profoundly grateful that I wasn't at UMass, okay, and carrying on like I did before, okay, so profoundly grateful. So here I am, I'm back in here, and I'm in a full lotus, okay, and in India you wear these dhotis, these thin white linen clothing, because they keep you cool. So I just have this dhoti on, and I'm barefoot, and I'm sitting in a full lotus on this bench. And then I'm so grateful, I'm so at peace, and I'm communing with my presence, and I'm just so grateful that I've had these experiences in this lifetime, and that my heart's opening and soaring. And then I feel this movement in my aura, and it's more insistent. So I open my eyes quicker, fully expecting to see someone standing in the doorway, and there's no one there. And I said, And I said, and by this time, I was sensitive enough to know when something's going on, and something was definitely going on here. So I went back into meditation and just went really, really deep. And then after a period of time, there was an urgent alarm in my aura, requiring immediate attention and action. And my eyes flew open, and there was no one in front of me. And then while my eyes are open, there is this movement in my aura above me. And I slowly, very slowly raise my eyes up from the door. And above my head, draped across the beam, is a giant king cobra. And the king cobra, was thicker than my thigh. And I'm a big guy, all right? And the king cobra was thicker than my thigh. And his head was draped down in a big U. About 3 or 4 feet of his body, from his head back, was draped down in a big U. The rest of him was coiled around this beam that held the bamboo hut up. And his hood was fully opened, and his mouth was open, and his tongue's going out, and his eyes are probably less than 2 feet from my eyes. Okay, that's how close he was. I was looking straight at his eyes, and less than 2 feet away, 18 inches away. And this king cobra was the biggest king cobra I've ever seen by far. He was probably 8, maybe even 9 feet long, all right, and he was huge. And here it is, 12 noon on my 23rd birthday. And I said, Father, thank you. I said, what a perfect way to go out of this lifetime, to get bitten by a king cobra on my 23rd birthday at high noon. And I just
didn't fly off the bench.
And I just sat there, and I didn't move a muscle. And his head was swaying back and forth, and his tongue was coming out, and my eyes were locked on his eyes. And I was marveling at how beautiful he was, how incredibly beautiful he was. And he just swayed back and forth looking at me. And I didn't move a muscle. I was this calm, and I was totally prepared to go out. You get bit by a big king cobra like that, you're going to leave really, really quick. And I was totally prepared, and I even thought about how interesting my obituary would be in my hometown paper.
When I read that, I couldn't believe that.
So after a while, I said, well, geez, if you're not going to take me, I'm not going to stick around here. And I slowly lowered my hands from the cup lotus position and placed some palms down on the bench, never taking my eyes off of his eyes. And then I slowly uncrossed my legs and put them on the ground. And then I slowly slid my butt off the bench. And as I moved away from him, he came closer to me. And I'm crawling out of the hut now on my back, looking up at him as he's getting closer and closer to me until I was at the door. And then I stood up and I looked at him and I said, thank you, Father. And I turned around and walked into my life. So that was a near-death experience.
I was stunned that you could be that calm going through that.
Well, there was some pretty heavy stuff that happened before that in the Himalayas, and I figured that I had something to do, but that was an appointment that I knew was coming. I knew that I had that appointment coming for a very long time. And a very dear, very wonderfully blessed lady told me, very, very in tune. She told me that it was a great initiation, and that if I did not do exactly what I did, if I took my eyes from his eyes, I would have been struck in a second, and that would have been the end of this lifetime, And but I had work to do, all right. And this work, part of this work, is talking with you ladies right now and supporting.
Let's ask Patricia Kirkman. What do you think the significance of the numbers are? 23rd birthday, high noon. What does that mean?
Well, the 23rd birthday represents the number 5, which is major change and is the risk taker. But I also said it has a luck factor to it. Would you be offended if I asked just your month and day of birth?
May 25, 1950.
May 25, both 5.
1950.
So 5. Mm-hmm. So you have a high spirituality to begin with the 25 birthday. And that May has a major, I find that people born in May are very much risk takers. They're more into working with things that others have no concept of. Does that make sense?
Well, I just figure I'm hard-headed,
Well, that too, I'm sure. Well, but you have that spirituality because of the 25 as the birth number. The first letter of your name is also a 7, which represents high spirituality. So taking a look at that combination, with the universe right now, you are in a one universal year. So you're making some major changes and some major issues that are going to be put into order for you this year.
Well,
have you started something brand new? Because I'm picking up something very strongly that's new, that's going to make another impact on what you do.
Well, there's a whole lot going on, and I sure do want to connect with you ladies after this broadcast, and follow up on all this. But there's a whole lot going on. This book is right now it's in a running for 4 national literary awards in the body, mind, spirit genre, and it's been picked up by a major distributor, and there's a lot of stuff going on with it. We're doing outdoor events now, and I was just asked to do one in at Barnes and Noble in Hadley. And so things are going around, but again, it's the same work that you ladies are doing. It's time for a whole lot of people to wake up, because they need, this light is needed right now on this planet to turn the corner. And we're all connected. In the East they call it the Antakarana. It's a wonderful term in Sanskrit that means a web of light. In the heart chakra, which is the seat of the threefold flame of the divine presence, in each of you, in all the people that you touch, it's all connected together with all the other ones around the world, of all the people that are standing for the light and standing for love and honor and truth and trying to do the best they can. And if you could look at this earth from a spiritual perspective, you'll see this filigree, like this web of light connecting heart flame to heart flame to heart flame that pulses with the light of the Great Mother. And the Great Mother's physical outpost in time and space, actually outside of time and space, but in time and space too, is what many call this great brotherhood of light. It probably has more great lady masters in there than male masters. I just think that women have a step up on that, But at any rate, it's known by many different names from different cultures, but it is this, it's all about the light of the heart, and that's certainly what you ladies are all about. Yes,
that's true. We are. And Jean, please tell everybody your website also. Announce that for everyone.
Definitely.
Thank you, Patricia. The website is Upraised Chalice, all one word, .com. Upraised, like you're lifting your hands up, chalice, and .com. And you can order the book there from Amazon. You can read a whole bunch of chapter excerpts. Some really interesting experiences with the great ascended masters, an amazing experience that I was blessed with Mother Mary, and all the detail on the multiple near-death experiences that have happened to me here. Another pretty interesting one was a tractor flipped over on top of me into a pond that I was making.
Yeah, that was a wild one.
Oh, that was pretty intense. I have very quick reflexes. You have to be a flight instructor and not get killed by your students. Right. And,
or by yourself.
Right.
Well, hopefully, if you're a flight instructor, you know what you're doing by that. So you're not likely to kill yourself.
But your life in general, you are so much of a risk taker and have been since you were a youngster that you are here to talk about all these things is amazing.
Well, the key point about this, I'm going to bring it back to the point again. When someone is connecting with their own divine presence, the I am individualized in them, okay? Whatever they conceive that light to be, but they have to know that it's in them. And when they're sincere and when they want to do what they've come into this world to do, to bring forth the sacred labor for which they have been trained for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, it's the keynote of their very presence. And when they come and they start waking up in this lifetime, and if they're listening to your show, they're very far along the way already of waking up. When they can leverage their emotional body and their desire of their heart, and they want to love life, they want to love God and be of service as much as they can, that love is going to offset any karmic accounting that they may have to deal with. And so if someone is sick, or if someone has no money, or if someone's suffering from depression or whatever they're dealing with, if they just can get into their heart and say, show me, Father, show me, Mother, show me, Archangel Michael, show me, Archangel Aurora, show me what I need to do, and help me to do it. The call compels the answer in the physical plane, and if they stick with it, and if they have faith, that assistance is going to come down, and it's going to lift them up, and it's going to change their life. And no matter what they've been dealing with, it's going to change for the better. And that's got to be the best news out there, that
it is.
It's
great news, and I'm serious because, Patricia and I often talk about how people are in a state of desperation, and it's not letting up. It's just getting worse. And so hearing from you tonight is really good for people, because everybody in our audience can be inspired by this and have hope that they too can make this connection, they too can wake up in the morning and make this connection and end their day the same way. So it's filled with hope and connection rather than loss and isolation.
And
Very
Patricia,
true.
to put a punctuation point, an exclamation point after what you just said there, at the conclusion of the book, all right, this is not just a spiritual adventure story. This book is written for a reason, and this reason is a work that both you, Patricia Baker, and you, Patricia Kirkman, have been involved in for all your lives, and I'm sure many lifetimes as well. But at the conclusion of the book is a list of resources that I was going to use the word stumbled upon, but that's not at all accurate, that were put in front of me by my presence and by the great masters, including that one that happened in Jerusalem all those years ago, the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ. But there's a list of a dozen books that each one of those books and websites, all right, contain that living flame of divine love, a tangible thing. I'm not talking about any head trip here. I'm not talking about any mental gymnastics that you got to do here. For me, if you can't feel it in your heart, it's not real. And so many people, when they start opening up, they'll talk to this psychic or that psychic, and they don't realize that there's just as many dumb dead people as are dumb alive people. All right,
that's true.
It's all,
we've died to some of them.
It's all about the purity of the person who's doing the work, the purity of whether you want to call it a psychic or a medium or the healer. It's all about the purity of her heart, because by that purity of her heart, she will be able, or he will be able to go up so high in the other worlds, in the finer worlds. And whatever level of initiation they've already accomplished in this physical lifetime, that's as high as they're going to be able to get in the other worlds. And so you want to have someone who is just so full of love and just wants to help, and then there can be a real change here. Several years ago, a book came out called The Secret, and it got a whole lot of play. And it was a story.
Big news.
It was, but it was a story of fiction, or at least that's what they said it was, and it didn't take you anywhere. It didn't leave you off any place to go. All right. So this particular book, An Upraised Chalice, when you conclude the book, there is a list of resources for those who are interested in reading the lineage and the incredible teachings of this great Brotherhood of Light. It's right here, and it's not something that happened 50 years ago or 100 years ago. It's happening right now today. The Brotherhood is still extremely active, and for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear and a heart to feel, for those who can look through with the eyes of the heart, for those who can hear with the ears of the heart, for those who can think through the heart, not the mind, then the path is wide open, and they get to go to the top of the hill and collect $200. It's just that simple.
Well, I have to ask you this, Jean. You're giving really wonderful and inspirational messages to us and our audience tonight. We appreciate that. I have to ask you about the Yeti attack that you had experienced in the Himalayas. Sounds like you just made it inside the door when it was coming in right after you.
Well, again, when my editor and a couple different people read this, in the early days, in the process of putting this thing in chapters, there were some things that I had to include and other things that were just a little bit too wild that I couldn't include. But there's nothing in this book that isn't 100% true. And so here's a young man from Amherst, Massachusetts, on the other side of the world, drinking rum under a pagoda in Kathmandu on Christmas Eve in 1972. All right, and thinking about his life and what's going on, why this yearning for this ancient sacred wisdom that I knew was there, and I knew I had this appointment, and I knew I had to go to the Himalayas, and I knew I had to go to these Tibetan monasteries. And I met a guy there on Christmas Eve and we sipped a little bit of rum together, Nepali rum, and we both decided. I said, "Listen, I got to go to the monasteries." And there's a trail that I found out, a hiking trail that the expeditions use that go up to Mount Everest that goes by several of these monasteries. And I went to a mountaineer place and found out more about it. There was one mountaineer shop at that time in Nepal, and there were some European guys that were running it. So I got some equipment with my few dollars that I had in my pocket, and I got a map. I had to get a permit and a visa from the Nepali government because I was going up on a Tibetan frontier, and this is in the end of December now, all right, and it was winter, all right, and none of the expeditions go up there in winter, but I was here and I wanted to go to the monastery, so I was going to the monasteries come hell or high water. I long since gave up caring what happened to me. I had to follow my heart because it just wasn't worth anything if I didn't follow my heart. All right, I didn't care whether I ever came back to America then. I didn't care whatever happened to me. I had a mission, and that mission was to find out who I was and what I came here to do. And I knew that going to those monasteries in the Himalayas on the border of Tibet around Mount Everest were part of that. So anyways, I went up there, and it was a 25-day hike with about a pack that weighed over 80 pounds on my back. And this other guy, all right, we did it together. We were told to have Sherpas because we get lost. And to carry our gear, we said, no, couldn't afford that. So we just had maps, bought a bunch of antibiotics and bandages and first aid stuff and dehydrated foods and just compass and took off, and followed this mountain path for 25 days up to these different monasteries where I would spend the night talking with the lamas, even though they all except one could not speak English. But we would still communicate and have the most amazing experiences. All this is in the book. But anyways, got up to Mount Everest, all right? And the goal was only to climb up to this shoulder of Mount Everest called Kalapatar that was 18,500 feet above sea level. And that was the goal because there you could take pictures of the top of the world. There's no way that I was going to climb up the other 29,000 feet of Everest. All right, 18,500 was plenty enough for me. And on the way up there, we had all these amazing experiences in the monasteries and with different creatures up there in the Himalayas. One with a Tibetan wolfhound that was pretty hairy that's described in a book. You get to a point when you're in India, when not so much in any part of Asia that I was in, definitely not in Afghanistan, definitely not in Iran, definitely not in Pakistan. But when you cross into India, when you cross into Nepal, you're playing on a different league. There is a magical vibration that anything can happen here. Anything can happen. Is that
related to the crown chakra? I've heard that before with Nepal, that it is the crown chakra of Earth.
I know the mother flame, the seat of the mother flame is Lake Titicaca. I don't know about the crown chakra, but I do know that Shambhala is in that region. And those of you who have heard of the Wesak Festival, where Gautama comes every year to the Brotherhood and releases that light, hey, I'll send you, I have an electronic version of an article that I pulled out of the New Delhi Times that talks about the Wesak Festival. Patricia, I'll send that to you tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, we both like to see that. But tell us about the Yeti, because we're about to wrap up here. What happened? This thing came charging after you guys.
All right. So what happened? We're climbing back down from the mountain where I went snowblind and fell into the crevasse and almost didn't come out. And because it was so late, because I couldn't see anything for about 4 or 5 hours, having to climb down the glacier moraine, all the white ramparts of the high Himalaya all around, and it's a pitch dark, and the full moon is out, and it's so cold that when you spit, it breaks when it hits the ground. It cracks. All right. So walking 4 or 5 hours, 6, 7 hours down the glacier, and to get to a place because we knew there was a little hut that would give us some shelter out of the wind and cold. And as I got closer to this hut, there was a little bit of smoke coming from the hut, and I was so thankful that there was a Tibetan in there. And the hut was about maybe 10 feet square and maybe 4.5 feet high, 5 feet high. and it was buried into the ground because this is all glacial moraine up here. And he had a little open fire in a corner, and he was in there with his girlfriend, all right? And they were ancient, this Tibetan and his girlfriend. And we pounded on the door. It was probably 2 o'clock in the morning or something. And he opened the door, and they graciously let us come in. And we were so thankful. We sat on the ground with our backs up against the wall, so grateful that we were still alive, that we made it down from Kalapatar. And we didn't fall into another crevasse in the night under the moonlight. And we no sooner sat down, and the guy closed the door, and it was a big, heavy wooden door with a latch on it. All right, he just closed it, and there was the most blood-curdling roar, screech that I ever heard in my life, and it made my blood run cold. And the old man dove for the door and put down this big wooden beam across it, and then he dove for the little window that was about a foot square, just an open window, and boarded that up, and so the smoke was just coming in here. And then the old lady jumped into his arms and she shaking like a leaf and said, "Yeti, Yeti, Yeti." And then the thing was right outside the door and screeched again and pounded on the door a few times, and we were ready for that sucker to come through the door. And
my gosh. We've actually played on air, not Yeti calls because we haven't had anybody come up with those yet, but somebody has come up with Bigfoot calls from out in the Pacific Northwest, and it does make your blood run cold. It is so scary to hear it. And I don't know what's so scary about it other than it's so foreign. It just doesn't sound like anything else you can ever possibly imagine.
This thing was big, and it was angry, okay? It wanted in, and it was following us for a long time because up there in the high Himalaya, you can see forever. So this thing was up in the mountains following us, and we just got into the hut just before it caught up with us. We had our knives out ready for this thing to come through the door because it shook the whole door when it roared, and it pounded on it. It wanted to come in, and that old lady, that Tibetan lady and that Tibetan man, they were as terrified as we were. And that's a Yeti story. There's a little bit more to it, but that's all in the book, okay?
Yeah, that's all in the book, everybody. So make sure that you buy the book and Upraised.
What happened to the young man? What happened to the young man that traveled with you up to Everest? Do you keep in touch with him?
We got back to Kathmandu, all right, a month after we left, all right, because I arranged to fly back to Kathmandu, and that's how I got into aviation, strangely enough. I had to go to a yak field 5-6 days south of Mount Everest called Lukla, and made arrangements in Kathmandu before I left for a special plane to pick us up, land in short areas and take off in short areas. So we were waited there a couple of days, and the plane showed up and took us back to Kathmandu in an hour, what took me 26 days of hiking with an 80-pound pack to get to. And when we got back to Kathmandu, we said goodbye to each other, and we communicated a few times. He sent me the slides that you see in a book. In a book, there's 48 beautiful pictures from that trip from the Himalayas. And that was the last time we talked. I tried to get in touch with him a few times over the past 4 or 5 years when I started writing, but he was in the Northwest somewhere, and he just kind of dropped out of sight, So unfortunately, I've lost contact with him.
Oh, with such a journey that you two shared, it's a shame.
Yeah, it was quite a treasure, quite a treasure. So the name of the game is, what you wish for, you're going to draw into your life. And I just hope that everyone can just see that beautiful divine light, and as many people and everyone, and just focus on that, and say, okay, it's time, it's time.
Yes, exactly. It is time. And again, Jean, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Your book is called An Upraised Chalice, and your website again is?
UpraisedChalice.com.
So people can keep up with your appearances, book signings, and can reach you directly. So, again, thank you so much for a wonderful show. We've so enjoyed having you on tonight.
Definitely.
And good luck with all your exciting adventures.
And it's a fascinating book. That it is.
Patricia Kirkman, I would be very interested in talking to actually both you, Patricia Bacon, and Patricia Kirkman, after or the next stage or something about the conversations we just started to have here on a different subject, because there surely is a lot going on. You talk about how things are ramping up. Oh my God, are they ramping up?
Oh yeah, they really are. Well, you know how to reach us both. That's for sure, and we're certainly available to have more conversations. And it sounds like you've got another book in you somewhere, Jean, so we're going to have you back when that occurs. So, again, thank you so much for joining us on Supernatural Girls Radio. And next week, everybody, we have Don't Argue with a Dead Person, the author of that book. The week after that, we've got Fairy Magic with Orion Foxwood and Deep South Magic. He's a character and a half. We can't wait to have him back. So everybody, just keep tuning into the show every Wednesday, 7:30 to 9. Sign up on Supernatural Girls newsletter at supernaturalgirlswithaz.com. And be safe, everyone. We will see you on the Blue Highway. Good night.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, ladies.
Good night.
You're welcome.
Great talking with you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, darling.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with